Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. When it comes to news in EVE Online, we don't have that much new stuff to report. We do now of course know that the fight or flight quadrant, the PvP quadrant, is ending pretty much next week with the March release, which is being released on the 24th, and that one will bring quite a few changes to low-sec faction warfare, a couple of special events as well, with faster warp speeds in low-sec, better loot drops in low-sec, and a really special event where an alliance could be crowned as the kings of low-sec. Sounds pretty interesting. Not really sure, of course, if I will be able to participate. I'm mostly a Care Bear myself, but definitely I think a few steps in the right directions for faction warfare as well, for instance. On the front for the war that I'm in, not much to report there. Haven't really seen the enemy around, and the structures have not been hit for a second time. So we'll see how that works out, and of course I'll keep you guys up to date in the next videos as well. And that means we get to move on to the New Eden store. Let's take a look at that. It's still that new Oasis of Faith skin in an Amar skin for with green, white and black. I think it looks pretty cool on some of the ships at least. And other than that, let's take a look through all of this. We get some bundles then, but I'm not spotting any sales or anything like that. So that means we get to move on to the market itself, of course. And as always, we'll start with plex and stuff, and that's gonna be at 145. There we go, and let's take a look at that plex chart to start out with. You may already have seen it from the ticker below, but plex is going down in price, a pretty clear trend break away from that 3.25 million mark, and this time 5-day moving average is moving away. Daily averages are staying below all of that, so it's not looking too good for the price of plex at the moment. Well, at least if you want to plex your accounts, it is looking good, of course, because that becomes cheaper. We are talking about 3.2 million, a bit above that, for the sellers of plex in Jita, and then 3 million for the buyers. The buyers are down quite a little bit because of all of this. And then in the player owned trade hubs, pretty much the same for the sellers, a bit above 3.2, and then the buyers are just above 3 million, narrowing the margin a little bit more. But overall here, I'm seeing some pressure on the price of plex. We're again playing with 1-year lows. In September we were very close to this point, in December as well, but now this feels a lot more like a trend break. So look out below. What could change this, of course, is what CCP might announce, because they of course had quite a few plans for FanFest, and we still don't really know how they are going to bring that information to us. That could of course, I think, be a substantial moment, an important moment when it comes to the price of plex. So I wouldn't be too down just yet if I invested in plex, but yeah, this is obviously a trend that I did not expect myself. Next up, we have the multiple pilot train certificate. That one is pretty much flat on the 1.63 billion mark. Not that much to report here. I think 1.64 billion for the sellers and 1.544 billion for the buyers. So slight edge for the sellers on this one. And well, it's pretty stable at this price range, but at a cost, of course, really low volumes at the moment. Basically, this is the price, very expensive, I would say, actually, a multiple pilot training certificate at the moment. And it's just not budging, I think, because it's not really moving that much. For the skill extractor market, we of course have a chart that mirrors plex very closely. So we were trying to stay around the 380 million mark, but here at the end I think you can see that we are diving down substantially. On the price front, in the player owned trade hubs, we're selling for 363 million. Yeah, that's definitely well away from that 300 million mark, and the buyers are coming in at 354. That's a pretty narrow margin between buyers and sellers. In Jita we go up to 370 million ISK, but that is still a substantial leg down from 380 million ISK as well. After that, we have the injectors to take a look at, I would say. So let's get that filter right back. Oh, actually we can start like this. That's okay. Large scale injectors also taking a bit of a dive all of a sudden, so we were able to stay above 800 million ISK for most of the month of March and February. Not that bad considering the pressure on plex and the free skill points that CCP has been given, but that doesn't last anymore here. Let's take a look at the prices in JITA. Still 844 million ISK for the sellers, but 788 million for the buyers. That's a substantial margin that's opening up here, and then the sellers in the player on trade hubs are going down to 819 million. So here we do see quite a bit of movement, I would say, in the large scale injectors, a bit of volatility that's coming back in the market. So I would say that we are seeing some hesitation when it comes to the large scale injectors, maybe even some panic as well, because of course they have just driven the price down a little bit more. For the small scale injectors, we again see a week where we basically have an opposite movement. The daily averages are actually at the higher end towards 170 million ISK for the small scale injectors. Still don't really have a good explanation for that, but we're talking 170 million for the sellers, 153 million for the buyers, much narrower margin. And let's see if JITA goes up a lot more. No, 170 for the first seller, 177 for the next ones. It's still a decent margin up between the player on trade hubs and JITA 4 itself, but it doesn't feel like it's as large as the large scale injector market here. That really has a very big difference between what's happening in JITA, the player on trade hubs, and then finally those average prices here that are now down well below 800 million ISK. Some of these buyers must be grabbing these large scale injectors and these small scale injectors as well for these prices. Kind of interesting. After that, we have the daily alpha injectors to take a look at. So these are now finally trending up a little bit away from those, well, sub 40 million prices. I mean, you'd expect 60 million to be a possible normal price for the daily alpha injectors, if the pause is any indication. These volume spikes, of course, showing that CCP has done quite a few sales on them. I think, yeah, we still have to wait for these to be fully absorbed. But now we finally have a second leg up away from 40 million ISK. We're talking 43 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers. So this is also a slight change, although at the tail end here, the last couple of days, we're crashing back down. So we'll see how the daily alpha injector market will be able to hold up. And then finally, we have the hypercore market that is, well, staying between 340 and 360,000 ISK. There's not really that much to say in this young market. If we have a longer chart and we see some real trends, then that might become a bit more interesting to see what's happening with the Hypernet relay, of course. Let's move on to the minerals and see what's happening there. Coming in at 740. Like that. As always, we'll start with titanium. We already have seen on the ticker below that we have a little bit of a pullback, but keep in mind where we're at. 8 ISK, 1 year high point, so a bit of a pullback is normal. There must still be some stocks out there that are now going to try to take advantage of these better prices. We're talking, well, we should really go to JITA considering what we're seeing here. 820 for the sellers, still a really good price. Bit of margin opening up though, 710 for the buyers. They are being a bit more patient and trying to snag some cheaper titanium on that front. Volume wise, well, 200 million. 100 million, yeah, we're not seeing the billions come in just yet. So I would say that we might be able to defend this average 8 ISK with a little bit of luck. For pyrite, we are also pretty much flat just below 8 ISK at this point. Not bad if you look at this 1 year chart, of course, almost a doubling of the price. 763 for the sellers and 715 for the buyers. And here we do see a bit of a difference. Look at that, 700 million units, 400 million units, another 500 million units. There's obviously still far more stocks of pyrite out there than there are of titanium, which is a really weird situation because you always should be able to get far bigger volumes of titanium if you spend, let's say, an hour mining than pyrite. But this is just the situation. Pyrite has basically been oversaturated by quite a bit more, which is why its price went below the price of titanium, which is of course complete reverse world as well. And so now as a result, we'll have a little bit more time, I think, before pyrite really becomes scarce, just like titanium does start to feel a little bit scarce with those volumes. And we'll have to see if we have another leg up in the price or not in the pyrite market. Mixelon after that doing well to get back to 70 ISK, also has to give back a little bit of ground, but again from a 1-year high point, so a much more similar chart to Tritanium on the Mixelon front, which is normal. Both Tritanium and Mixelon were able to maintain a reasonable average compared to its historical value. Pyrite and Isogen, for instance, had declined quite a lot more. As a result, we're seeing, let's take a look at that, 70 ISK, 72 almost for most sellers in JITA. Buyers coming in at 62.54, again a bit of an opening up of a margin here. And then the volumes, of course, 10 million units, that seems to be the upper ceiling, with one seller of 50 million down here at 72.40. That again does indicate that there's no massive stocks still waiting out there. There might be some people, of course, still trying to take advantage of these higher prices. And then we have the Isogen market that's staying above 20, or trying to, so that's actually decently good. And here we are talking 21.75 for the sellers, 20 ISK for the buyers, so staying above 20 and able to do so. But look at that difference again. Normally you have more Mixelon and Isogen if you mine for a certain period of time, and yet we have 30 million, 24 million, 30 million, another 50 million down here. So you can clearly see that there's still more Isogen stocks out there that are trying to sell now at these higher prices. And again, that's the real question, I would say. Do Isogen and Pyrite eventually dry up as well, and do we have another leg up to go for these in price? It could be very interesting, of course. After that, we get the Noxium chart, one that is a little bit different from all of these. A massive spike from 250 to 500 ISK, a doubling of the price in a matter of days. That is not too sustainable, of course, but now we're obviously moving in a 350 to 400 range, above the entire range from the rest of the year. So that's decently impressive. 392 for the sellers and 350 for the buyers. So this one, yeah, a slightly different nature, of course, in Noxium, not available in all HiSec systems, still substantial sources, I think, outside of HiSec as well. So this one is really doing its own thing. And then finally, we have our former nullsec minerals. Zydrine is trying to get back above 600 ISK, succeeding so in these sellers, actually decently well. 618 for the sellers, but 567 for the buyers. Bit of a margin opening up here. And then the volumes, 500,000, 800,000, these are down substantially as well. And then for Megasite, we actually have a slightly downward movement, not even a 1-year high point, staying below 450. On the average price, it's 450 for the sellers and 430 for the buyers. And here again, a big difference in volumes, 2 million here, 1.5 million here. For Zydrine, where do we have to go until we see million? 620 ISK round, when we see a couple come in with a few million units. So there's obviously something major happening when it comes to the volumes of all of these minerals as well. The drought period is here, and it is showing up in the market. It makes for an interesting time for mining and producing Tritanium and Mixelon that are at 1-year high points, and historically speaking at pretty good prices. But the real question is, all of those that still have reserves out there, will these dry up? Will they have another leg up, or will these stay the same? Will CCP eventually come out with their plans and actually open up the spigots again? All of that is of course unknown at this point, but it's pretty interesting. I would say right now I would be selling whatever I produce, because I think that these are the best prices we've seen in a long time, and it's really good for miners, I think. Next up, we have the PI market that's coming in at 1325. Let's take a look at that one. Last week, I think, still had the same problem, a bit of a lack of demand. Broadcast nodes, though, a trend break again, a bit of a, not even on that big of a volume spike, except maybe it's this one that triggered it on that 1-year low point. Then, yeah, I think speculators are still taking their positions in the advanced PI materials, hoping that CCP announces something around structures. 2.6 million, not that much supply. 2 million for the buyers, so it's a massive margin that has opened up. This is obviously also a bit of a supply problem. Let's take a look at player-owned trade hubs here. They're coming in 2.4 and down to 2.1 million, and yet the trade is obviously dominated by JITA if we look at these average prices. Okay, weird, unexpected spike for whoever is buying all of that stuff up. I hope that CCP announces a structure or something like that. Next up, we've got the construction blocks. Here we had that typical story, of course, during the fall after the Nasdaq blackout. We had a complete lack of demand, an implosion of demand that caused the price to go well below average for October, November, and even into December. We finally had a resurgence. January, February, we're back on our average 11K, but it was never really on very strong demand, and as a result now, we had to pay the piper again. We're back below that 10K for a couple of days, even a week, I would say. 10,700 for the sellers, 9,900 for the buyers. And then these are all of the sellers. You can see how much I can browse. There's quite a bit of availability. And then these buyers, even with the trade hubs, are not that great. And if it's only in JITA, that is really low demand at the moment. So that problem still obviously exists. And let's see if it's across most refined PI materials. It has been the case really badly for consumer electronics. So here again, Nasdaq blackout, a difficult fall, but then an even lower winter in January, February, March. So this one is really not doing well. 10,300 for the first seller, 11,000 for almost most of them. And then 9,700 for the buyer, substantially below 10,000 disc. And again, look at that lack of demand showing up in JITA. Nobody is interested in consumer electronics from there anymore. After that, we've got the coolants, even our fuel-related PI materials that, I mean, I produce mostly those because of the stability. Of course, you have a component where you know this is used for fuels, so there is a more consistent demand, generally speaking, in these. At least there's a chance for that. And you can see that in this chart as well, decently strong fall here with actually some spikes up to 14K. But now at the tail end, it's really not looking good. We're heading back for 11,000 disc, which is quite a bit below average. 11,800 for the sellers. That is still decent, but look at this, buyers below 10,000 disc. There's some competition in JITA, but you can again see by the number of orders that we are lacking in demand now, pretty much across the board for these refined PI materials. Let's see if there's any exceptions. Of course, this is actually a specialized PI material with a big exception. Cryoprotectant Solutions is able to stay above 200,000 disc because it is needed in implant production. To 17,000 for the sellers, 178,000 for the buyers. Very strong performance, of course, but a unique situation as well. Enriched uranium next. Here 14K normal average tied to fuels. You can see here in the month of March we've clearly been staying below that average. 13,760 for the sellers. It's not that bad a price, but look at those buyers. We've got one buyer at 12,900 and then we go down to 11,000 disc, showing again really that lack of demand in PI at the moment. Are we seeing some exceptions? Of course, the advanced PI materials have seen some surprise volatility in the last couple of months, like this spike here in the integrity response drones. And even at the tail end, you can see that we're recovering from that. Of course, people bring that to the market, seeing those better prices, but we're not going to less than 2.25 million. And then we're actually bouncing back up decently quickly as well. 2.6 million for the sellers, 2.4 million for the buyers. They have been forced up as well. Yeah, advanced PI materials seems to be the ticket at the moment. I'm again saying this is probably speculation on some sort of an announcement around a structure. Mechanical parts, similar story, had a bit of a problem in fall as well, but managed to claw its way back on 2 occasions to 11,000 disc, which is still really a good price for mechanical parts. But here at the tail end, you can see we are once again struggling. 10,800, 900 for most sellers, I'm gonna say. 9,600 for the buyers though. And again, if you look at JITA, it's just not a lot of buying that's happening here. Organic mortar applicators, advanced PI materials, so here again an exception, heading for 1.1 million, the higher end of its trade range. 1.1 for the sellers, 1 million for the buyers. Obviously either a bit more demand or speculation in this market. Robotics is then really not doing well. This one super stable before that, around 100,000 disc up until fall. Really a decent normal price for robotics, tied to fuels as well, so you have this more constant production. You can also make this on a single planet. At some point I had a few plasma planets where I made we had 4 extractors make then the refined materials, and then had 1 or 2 facilities that made these robotics. So it's pretty easy to produce. It tends to be really stable because of fuels, but look at this drop off here at the tail end. This is starting to look like it is almost investment worthy, but for the longer term, of course, the PI market in general is struggling. 83,000 for the sellers, 81,000 for the buyers. Look at the sellers, look at how much we can browse here, and quite a bit before we find 90k, quite a bit, a lot in fact, before we find 100,000 disc, which was the average price, you could say, for the first half of the year. And then the buyers, well, this is it. So obviously a real lack of demand here. Gotta drink a little bit, sorry about that. There we go. After this, let's move on. Well, maybe just a quick word. If I'd be producing robotics, I would definitely be hoarding and then buying around 81,000. Well, if this drops off and you can buy below 80,000, I mean, then you have, I think, a really good investment for the longer term. For self-harmonizing power cores, here we are starting to see that pattern again. Advanced PI material tied to the production of structures, which, I mean, there's maybe another explanation, of course, with all of these resource changes. We have also seen a substantial jump in price for the refineries, for the blueprint copies of the refineries. So it is possible that there's just massive amounts of refineries that are being built as well at the moment. That could explain this increased price as well. The one problem that I have with that theory is I'm not seeing it in the volumes. So it's a bit of an open question as to exactly why advanced PI materials are going up, but it's across the board now. You can see the volatility has picked up, you can see some spikes, and right now all of them so far have been well above average. 2.4 million for the sellers, 2.2 million for the buyers. That is obviously not a bad price at the moment. Superconductors are one exception, although a very difficult both fall and winter for superconductors. So I had been hoarding this stuff for like 6 months straight because I produced these. You can clearly see that same pattern. 12,500 is the normal average price. Then after the Gnostic blackout, we fell to 10,000, 11,000, something like that as a trade range. Really didn't feel that good. And then all of a sudden here, February, March, a nice sell opportunity, 14,000 disc almost on some of these days. And yeah, I've been selling, of course, in this. Hopefully, it's not a bubble, but in this higher price region. And right now, 14,500 still for the sellers, not bad at all. 12,000 for the buyers. So we're staying pretty strong, although it does look like the moving average is moving down towards those buy prices. After that, we've got our test cultures, also one that is showing some volatility at the tail end here on the upswing, and I think we need test cultures to create a lot of these advanced PI materials. I think that's where this is coming from, and it's a complete lack of supply. 20,000 almost for the sellers, that is really good. Nothing else for sale. Buyers though, 12,000 disc almost, that's a massive margin. And so here, yeah, the market is being bought out for test cultures though, so it's entirely possible that there is a higher demand for test cultures, lots of buying happening in order to produce stuff like wetware mainframes and the other advanced PI materials. And thus we get up to 2.5 million here again. Look at the above average price range, look at the resurgence of quite a bit of volatility. Compare that to this one here, nicely on the 2 million to 2.25 million. We're moving nicely in between that. A bit of a slump fall here as well, but here at the tail end we obviously a bit more activity price-wise in this market. 2.5 million almost for the sellers, 2.3 million for the buyers. Yeah, this is pretty interesting, but it is confirming the trend for most refined PI materials. We're seeing a lack of demand, but we're seeing either speculation or increased demand in the advanced PI materials tied to structures all of a sudden. So I'm almost seeing three categories in this one at this point. We've got PI that's tied to fuels, which tends to be far more stable and has had a pretty good year, I would say. Then we have PI materials that are not tied to fuels, but that are still the refined ones. These have been struggling basically since the Gnostic blackout. And then we have the advanced PI materials tied to these structures that have actually been struggling before all of this, but are now seeing a resurgence in volatility and price. Next up, the advanced materials coming in at 24 minutes. Like that. All right, let's take a look at these crystalline carbonites. After doing really well to get 160 ISK on quite a few occasions, also showing a little bit of volatility. Right now though, we have dipped down quite substantially, less than 150 for the sellers, 144 for the buyers. If you expect this volatility to continue, that means it's the right time to buy. Otherwise, yeah, just hold off on selling, of course. Ferrite carbide doing well to stay above 140, staying slightly above average, 144 for the sellers, 131 for the buyers. I'd say that it's okay to like basically produce and sell. Not really a place where I would be speculating just yet. After that, we have our titanium carbide that is continuing its decline. I mean, it was trying to hold on to 175 at the tail end here. We were clearly seeing a trend break where we're not going back above that. And now at the very tail end, we're heading for 150. 158 for the first seller, 160 for most, and 151 for the buyers. Tungsten carbide next is struggling as well, although a bit more volatile than titanium. 189 for the sellers, 175 for the buyers. Let's see, titanium carbides, 1 year low point. If you're looking for that investment, this is of course where I would put a buy order. Next up, we've got our metamaterials, photonic metamaterials. All right, well, I think I bought at the right time. Let's see on the ticker. I think I should have put them here by now. Photonic metamaterials bought for 15,000. This just below that. Sellers already back up to 16,000. Buyers though at 14,000. So you can still grab some cheap ones. But here we had this very clear 2-3 month trend where we were going ever down, playing with those low points, and now we're seeing some volatility come back. So this might be basically a bottom forming here. Volumes down the drain as well, so we might have lack of supply that is going to start volatility, and hopefully we can get to higher prices. After that, we've got the plasmonic metamaterials. These are flat, slightly below average, so I would not say that this is speculation worthy. Also seeing a bit of a lack of supply on this one. 22,000 for the sellers, 21,000 for the buyers. That's decently reasonable, I would say. Non-linear metamaterials are still struggling, staying above 20k, but yeah, definitely below average. What would I do here? Not much, to be honest. And then finally we get the terahertz metamaterials that are also not a 1 year low point, also struggling. In fact, struggling to stay above 20k, 20,400 for the sellers, 18,500 for the buyers. That's a decently wide margin. You could gamble on a buy here at this point, but I would say that's still a little bit too early considering the general trend that we're seeing here. Next up, fermionic condensates. Well, also struggling, getting back towards 80k on the daily averages, 86,000 for the sellers, 78,000 for the buyers. Yeah, obviously not doing too well either. Ferrogel also on the downtrend, heading for that 35,000 disc again, 38,000 for the sellers, 33,000 for the buyers. Really low as well. So here across the board we're seeing declining prices, but I'm not seeing pronounced 1 year low points too often. So I would say a little bit too early to call this as an opportunity to be buying. An exception here, Fullerite is doing really well to stay above 1,000 ISK, above its average, 1,100 for the sellers, almost 1,100 for the buyers. So this is yeah, nicely selling at this higher trade range. Hypersynaptic fibers next, continuing its decline as well. 1 year low point. This one is very pronounced, and I think I tried to buy these hypersynaptic fibers. Yeah, bottom for just below 9,000 disc. Was I a little bit early? That is entirely possible. Well, looks like I may have timed this one correctly. 10,000 for the sellers and just above 9,000 for the buyers. But this one, of course, has that same struggling problem, but now is at a 1 year low point. So here I did make a move. Nanotransistors also like a little bit of a different market, had this really strong summer on a complete lack of supply, and is still able to stay in that range. 5,850 for the sellers, 5,400 for the buyers. Pretty good to produce, I would say, or to be selling right now. Phenolic composites then bumping off of 1875. Yeah, not really buying, not really selling. This is too much in the in-between spot. Also really narrow margin actually. 1876 for the sellers, 1811 for the buyers. Yeah, this is, I mean, an okay range, I think, but for speculation, not that great. And then still ceramic fibers also struggling again. 1 year low points, unless these buyers are closer to 300, yeah, 341. Nope, not yet. So difficult in this advanced move materials market. There are some pronounced exceptions in my opinion, like hypersynaptic fibers. I made a move on that. And then the plasmonic metamaterials, which one was it? No, the photonic metamaterials then, yeah. These had been struggling for quite a while. I made an investment below 15k on that one as well, but it's very difficult. It feels very risky in the advanced movement heroes. You definitely don't have that regular volatility or anything like that, which is going to be a little bit different in the Take-Two ship market, which is coming in at 29.40. And here you guys probably know that I took some gambles there as well. I'm not sure if I grabbed the Guardian. Actually, I haven't checked on that order just yet. But this is the volatility, of course, that we're talking about. Look at that Ares. It's an interceptor, so it's not even like stealth bomber or a logistics cruiser, which I tend to love the most. But look at that, below 25, up to 35, back to 25, back to 32.5. I mean, this is stuff where you can make some trades, of course. Right now, we're recovering from the latest peak. It's still 30,000 for the sellers and then 26,000 for the buyers, so you don't want to be buying or selling at this point, especially with 660 of them coming in at just below 30 million ISK. That is going to be a problem. I hope you're not relisting this order too often, because that is going to be very expensive at this point, or actually I hope that you are, because that's gonna just drain a lot of ISK from the market. Yeah, wait if this has more volatility, if this downtrend has more momentum, and with this it looks to me like it is going to have a lot more momentum, which could be in for another wave coming in. So you just have to keep a close eye on that. For the Basilisk here, we have pretty much a similar thing. Very noticeable low point where I tried to buy and actually bought one. Let's see if I moved that to the ticker already. Yeah, Basilisk, I bought one for 175 million ISK. That is well below this entire chart. Very, very happy with that purchase. And look at that, 209 million for the sellers, 183 million for the buyers. I could already sell this at a decent profit, but of course, as I've said in the previous video, right now for these purchases and for the Take-Two ships, I'm really curious what next week is going to give, because of course we have this low-sec faction warfare PvP update that might really bring some fights to the game, and what I think could be doing really well there. Of course, some logistics cruisers in small gang, you'd want those on the field, stealth bombers for third partying, stuff like that. So I definitely think I'm gonna wait a while before I'm selling and hoping for a real spike because of that update. After that, here we've got the Cerberus that's already taking off substantially. Do I have a Cerberus? Yes, I bought one for 195 million. Could sell it for 260 million already, 212 for the buyers. So here, one of the best charts in my opinion. Look at this first part of the year, 280 and then down to the 210 range. You could probably buy for 200 million on this chart as well. So that's like super wavy, very, very nice. And here at the end, same thing down here. And I actually bought and sold on this wave and on this wave, and now I bought on this third wave as well. So let's hope that it keeps coming, because this is why I have the Take-Two ship category in EVE Talk. I love this. This is my favorite place, honestly, to do a little bit of speculative trading. If it works out, then you know you're making some real risk in a pretty short term here. So the Cerberus is working on another one. Same thing, I'm going to take that gamble to not try and sell for like 260 at this point, but that we are going to work on that momentum when Tuesday hits, and that maybe just after that would be the right time to sell. Next up here we get the Crow that also had a bit of volatility here, up to 40 million ISK after diving down to 25 million as the trigger day. Very interesting, of course. We're recovering from that. We're still at 31.4 million for the sellers, quite substantial, 28.5 million for the buyers, also much higher than what we would like to see, of course. And here volumes are far more reasonable, so I think we'll need a little bit more patience. I think the Ares might make a move much more quickly. After that we have the Guardian that is still flat at this just above 200 million range, 214 for the sellers, 186 for the buyers. That should mean that my buy order, let's see here, trying to buy Guardian at 184. Ooh, no, oh, maybe not. I was maybe a little bit too aggressive on this one. Yeah, it's probably going to be this one right here, unfortunately. So a bit of competition coming in. It doesn't always work, of course. But I tried to buy this downtrend, and I think on this one will probably fail. you can see that we have gone below 200 million on the averages as well. So if this now works out that we have a spike because of the release that's coming next week, we might actually see another downtrend where this buy order is going to trigger. So I'll be patient on this one. I'm patient with my Manicores as well, try to grab those for 24 million. Once I have this range, of course, I try to repeat those purchases at those same ranges. But now for the Guardian, doesn't look like I'll succeed. After that, we've got the Hawk that is slightly up here of 40 million on today's daily average. A little bit different, of course. Hawk is more, I think, of a PvE platform used in the Abyss. 40 million on a lack of availability, 35 million for the buyers. Much less something to look into, I think, for speculation. But you know, if you want some cheap Hawks to use and potentially lose in the Abyss, of course, you might want to keep an eye on this one. This was a request from someone to replace another ship, so I'm okay with this, just keeping one eye on the assault frigates. I think if there's any category where CCP might intervene as well, it would be popular ships in the Abyss, so all of that I think is good to keep an eye on that. Then we get the Heretic here crashing down on massive supplies, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 65 million for the sellers with 230 right here. 53 million now for the buyers. So I made the right gamble at the right time because I actually grabbed a Heretic for 52 million ISK. And I'm going to hope that this supply dries up. These orders here at the tail end are a bit worrying, but it's only 2 of them. So I think that we can get another resurgence on a complete downturn of supply, or my gamble actually for the interdictors is longer term because trading less than 25 of these a day on average is too low in my opinion. I think CCP might look into these ships at some point, although to be fair, I think I've been saying that for over a year at this point. Next up, we've got the Hound, another one of my favorites when it comes to that volatility. Look at that, 35 down to 25, back up, back down, back up, back down, back up, up. And here we go. We are doing this one again. Unfortunately, I don't think I've got any Hounds left at this point. But you could have bought these for well below 25 million. You still can, 23.5 million, and they're now selling for 33 million. This might be the exact same thing that I'm talking about. Perhaps my video has also caused a little bit of extra speculation to happen in some of these Tech 2 ships like the stealth bombers, because right now that's a pretty wide margin between sellers and buyers. If you bought below 25, you can definitely try to sell at a profit already. After that, we get the Ishtar. Yeah, in my opinion, more of a PvE platform, although it is used quite often in Nullsec as well. I would say that it has that stronger, steadier demand. Look at that, also 100 a day. Compare that to stuff like the Heretic, that's kind of terrible. Even stealth bombers, it's competing with a much smaller, less costly ship in its daily volumes, which is, I think, why it is far more stable. It is still above 230, yeah, 230 for the sellers and 216 for the buyers. Average normal price, not really one that I use to speculate on, although we also saw that if another ship that is a real PvE platform gets nerfed, that's always a boon for the Ishtar. This is exactly what happened down here when we went to 200 million ISK. CCP then changed the Vexor Navy issue and we shot up by 25% in a matter of days on that one as well. So I just love the ship myself. It's probably gonna be a forever Tech 2 ship part here. Next up here we've got the Manicore. Did a jump off of 30 million ISK. That's a bit of a surprise, although in the first half of the year it happened quite often. I was hoping that 25 million would become the cutoff point for the Manticore. Right now on a lack of availability, anything in the player-owned trade hubs? Yeah, a couple, but not that much. 40 million for the sellers, 31 million for the buyers. And I unfortunately don't have any for sale. Yeah, I actually did a buy at like 22 million on this downtrend, I think, and I sold too early at around 30 here. But it looks to me like for the Manticore, the trade range is going to go back from 30 million at the low end, and then potentially up to 40 million, like right here. Interesting. At least the volatility is still here. Next up, we get the Munin. Went to a high point last week up to 280, back down to 230, so this is some volatility, but of course I think percentage wise it's far less than what we're seeing in stealth bombers. 235 for the sellers, 219 for the buyers. Nemesis, The one exception, although I love the Nemesis myself, of course, Galente ship, you know, unique looking. It's a stealth bomber. It does its job. I don't think it is that bad of a ship, but it's now trending slowly below 25 million. As you can see, we once slumped down to 20 million, but most triggers for volatility do tend to happen around 25 million. So 26 million for the sellers, availability is still decently high, 21 million for the buyers. You know, you could already try, hope for some volatility. You're buying down here on the market. But I think it's a little bit of a gamble considering that it's lacking volatility compared to like the Hound, compared to the Manticore at the moment. The Oneros is continuing to go down, 190 on average, 200 million for the sellers, 174 for the buyers. Here again, you could do a buy order, but then honestly, I'd never do more than one ship in the Oneros because of this, of course. These volumes are just terrible. Then we get the Purifier. That was a better first half of the year on volatility with a spike up to 50 million ISK, but also not doing that great in volatility at the tail end. We're landing above 25 million for the averages, 28 million for the sellers, 23 million for the buyers. We can still buy below 25 million, hope for a bit of a spike. But yeah, honestly, the other stealth bombers have been doing better. Then here we get the Saber, 65 million flat, 65 for the sellers, 55 for the buyers. Yeah, I'm definitely happy with my 52 million on the Heretic. We were slumping down, we still had oversupply, so that one made a lot of sense. For the Saber, I would also try to buy really low, but then, you know, try to buy on a downtrend like this. That's when you have the better chance of actually triggering, getting your buy order triggered there. After that, we get the Scimitar, that's already taking off as well. Started at 200 million, is now selling for 240. Buyers are still below 200 million though, so this is definitely a weird movement a little bit as well. And then we get the Zarmas, stable below 300 here, 294 for the sellers, 276 for the buyers. So first half of the Tech2 ship market, very exciting. I also made some gambles or purchases there as well, hoping that the PvP update is going to help bring in quite a bit of profit. Second half, yeah, Manticore is still doing well, but after that, Nemesis, that's not really the volatility we want to see. But keep one thing in mind though, these buy orders for both the Nemesis and the Purifier are well below 25 million ISK, which has often been the trigger for these ships to show some volatility. So it could be okay to risk a purchase on those as well. I have made my moves, so we'll see if it works out, of course. Let's move on to the Tech3 ship market, coming in at 41.45. Actually gonna drink a little bit first as well. And let's see what's happening here. Here is the Confessor basically diving down to 35 million ISK. Not entirely unexpected because we had to spike up to 50 million ISK, and a bit of an over response tends to happen. 35 million, 36.6 million for most sellers, 30 million for the buyers. Availability still higher, 69.43 over here. The rest is far more reasonable, so this is actually an interesting situation. I think up to last week we were able to stay above 40 million on the average price, and we were seeing a lot of supply that was indeed in danger of overshooting the target. Now you're buying these for 30 million ISK. I would say look at the dates here. Just a couple of sell orders in the last 24 hours. Everything else is starting to become substantially older as well. Yeah, if you would want to take a gamble, I would say buy a couple of Confessors right now, as close as possible to 30 million ISK. I think we'll see a rebound on a lack of supply, because who is going to bring in Confessors at this price? Normally, not too many people. It depends a little bit on what the others are doing, of course. Here is the Hecate, for instance. Yeah, that's good news for the Confessor. Hecate shooting back up to 45 million ISK, 49 million in fact for the sellers, 43 million for the buyers. Availability is down. We apparently went to 0 because everything here has been released in the last 24 hours. That should mean a lot of supply coming to the Hecate. That should mean even less supply for the Confessor. That one should have a lot of room to grow. After that we get the Jackdaw, a lot more what we expected, an even more massive spike up to 70 million ISK, but far more reasonable. Right here, get back to that 40 million. Nope, we're just shooting right down on too much supply. For the Jackdaw, we're nicely landing on 40 million ISK. That feels a lot better. 41 million for the sellers, 35 million for the buyers. 63 is a lot, but other than that, it is very, very reasonable in volume. So really impressed with the restraint basically on the Jackdaw, despite a spike up to 70 million ISK. That's an incredible opportunity. You'd think producers would go crazy over that. They have been far more reasonable, restrained, and then we're landing nicely on 40 million ISK, which I think is still going to be a really good price for producers as well. And in on the Confessor, yeah, they've gone overboard too much, which has created, in my opinion, an opportunity. Buy a couple of Confessors close to 30 million ISK. I think you will not regret that. Although it's a gamble, right? I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm just trying to read the market here and giving you guys my opinion. And then here, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Well, my Zwepel prediction has materialized. 49 million for the sellers of Zwepel, 41 million for the buyers. And I said last week we were seeing quite a bit of room for the Zwepel to grow, because who was going to bring that in? Or was it 2 weeks ago? I'm not really sure anymore, but the Confessor was still above 40, the Jackdaw was still on the recovering process, and then the Heckgate was doing okay, staying above 40 million. And then on that Zwepel, we saw supply dry up. So now, of course, in the last 24 hours, they're starting to come in finally at 49 million ISK. But this is a great time to be selling, of course, whatever you bought a couple of weeks ago. I think you could have bought these well below 35 million, like 33, 32-ish, something like that. Yeah, and I am kind of predicting, again, I'm not sure if I'll be right, something similar to happen to the Confessor, especially if we look at the Heckgate shooting back up, the Jackdaw easily maintaining, I mean, the most popular tactical destroyer, easily maintaining 40 million ISK. There's little reason for this crash down to 35 million, and then 30 million for the buyers for the Confessor. And then even the Zwepel, the least popular one, also shoots up on a complete lack of supply. So this is really nice. I love this because this feels predictable. This is a normal market interaction between these ships. 40 million is my go-to average, and then you can clearly see what's happening with supplies and try to gauge what's happening with the price. Very, very impressive stuff. I really regret not pulling the trigger on Zwepels myself, because I think you could have very easily bought a lot of these for like 33 million or something like that. And trading 4 or 5 of them for like 45 million or so is gonna be pretty easy to do, I think. Let's move on to what I'm more afraid of, which is the cruiser market. Far more unpredictable in my opinion. Here's the Legion working on very close to 1 year high point. 197 million for the sellers, 161 million for the buyers. Availability. Despite that, in the last 24 hours, we have 1 of 24, and then everything else is much smaller, which is kind of weird. Volume-wise here, right, we're not really moving that much, and yet you see these swings from 200 million down to 140, back up to 200. Well, right now, I would say sell, 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 of course. This is an incredible opportunity to sell Legions at a great price. Loki is in the same place, even worse, I would say, if you're trying to buy one. 300 to 350 million range, 330 million for the sellers, 285 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, 2 of them coming in. How is that possible that we're just not seeing any supply response to a crazy price like this? I mean, here in October, November, there was also no supply. It was 150 million ISK. I just don't understand this market, I have to be honest. Compared to the destroyer market, this one feels really, really bonkers. The responses that you would expect are not there. Let's take a quick look at the Proteus, the not so popular one. This one is staying flat at 150. Are you really telling me that one Loki is worth more than 2 Protei? Can't believe it myself. 154 million for the sellers, 141 for the buyers. And finally, the Tengu had also a nice swing up to 250 million is coming down from that very quickly. 204 now for the sellers, 168 for the buyers. Still a very reasonable price. But yeah, this is really crazy to me personally. I don't have a good explanation for this. If you guys remember, October, November, we were crashing down across the board here, right? Legion 1 year low point, we had the Loki 1 year low point, we had the Proteus 1 year low point, and then the Tengu as well. But the weirdest stuff, this was on next to no availability. There may be a couple dozen of ships on the market on the sell prices for this low point. And then now look at that Loki 1 year high point, double the price. And what's coming in the last 24 hours, even in the last day, it's 6 sell orders, 3 sell orders in the last 24 hours. This is just crazy. This feels crazy to me. You would expect now people to be dumping Lokis like crazy for this price. But no, or you would have expected them to be dumping them like crazy to bring the price down to 150. No, that is just not happening. This is a very, very weird market. Also full of opportunity, but it feels far more risky because it's completely unpredictable in my personal book. Right now, considering what the Tengu has been doing here, sell. I would say sell. Sell your legions, sell your Lokis. You get some crazy good prices for those at the moment. That makes for a pretty damn interesting, man, that Loki. 300 plus million. Crazy stuff. That makes for a pretty interesting Tech 3 ship market segment, I think. And next week, let's hope that I'm right for the Confessor. But I think I am considering what this Vapel and the Hecate have been doing. This cannot last, in my opinion. And then finally, we are getting to the extra product for today. I'm just gonna take a look at some rigs. It's been a while, and you know, salvage. What the hell's been going on with that one? I don't know. Coming in at 50 minutes. So let's go. We've got, I think it's, yeah, ship modules and modifications. Here we go. We get some rigs. We're just gonna try and find some, I think, popular ones in the armor rigs. I know that, for instance, the is it Trimark, I think? Is that just plain HP? Volumes seem to be okay, and yeah, just straight up armor hit points. Very interesting. A massive crash from February at a high point of 20 million down to 10 million, a halving of the price in 1 month. 10 million, 8 million for the buyers. That is a very substantial move. Not good news for salvagers. I'm assuming, if this has happened, that their prices have crashed down as well. We'll take a quick look at some of the others and see if we see a trend here. Obviously, not, well, actually 15 million down to 7.5 million. Anti-EM 1 year low point here as well for the large anti-explosive. Anti-kinetic is down. Oof, large anti-thermal right here, 20 million, and currently selling for 8.5 million. Demand, nothing. And these are large. I mean, battleships. Come on, guys, what the hell? These are getting the frigate escape bay. That almost makes me want to gamble on these. Large auxiliary nanopump, 20 million, not that long ago, January, February. Right now, selling for 17 million. That's a little bit better, but obviously down as well. Large nanobot accelerator, 20 million down to 12 million. Definitely for the large armor rigs, we're seeing a massive decline in price right now. Let's take a quick look at some of the more popular medium ones. Not as pronounced, but obviously down in price as well. We'll take a quick look maybe at some of these. Yeah, here, 4 million down to right now 2.8 million. Medium nanobot, oof, 1 year low point, getting down to 2 million ISK. Lack of demand. I mean, you're buying these apparently for less than 1.5 million. That is substantial as well. Okay, super interesting. Might be worth a gamble at this point. We also have the, let's see, shield rigs, right? Those tend to be really popular as well. Let's see, we'll get, I'm starting with Tech 1. Should I move? I'm gonna make it Tech 1 rigs. Because Tech 2, a whole other ball game, I think. Let's see what we got here. Very same story, right? 10 million, even a little bit more than that. 11 million not that long ago. 7 million right now. It's not a halving of the price, but it's definitely a lot less. Field extender, went to 12.5 million in February. Very strong early start of the year, and now 7.5 million ISK. This one, yeah, not traded enough to really be able to tell what's happening here. So you do have to find the right rigs, but the trend seems to be confirmed on these. Let's maybe try some smaller ones in the same vein. Defense field purger, that's pretty flat. Defense field extender, that's pretty flat as well. So that's not confirming or denying anything, I think. Medium one, definitely a downtrend after a strong February here as well. And back down to 2 million from 2.75 million for the medium core defense purger. So these are like basically tank rigs, I think, are often used, traded, and so these make a lot of sense to take a look at. First, missile rigs, I think, are also quite interesting PvE stuff, so might you know, see a bit more stability because of that. But look at this large warhead rigger catalyst one went to 10 million ISK, was trading for like 9 million ISK above that pretty easily again in January and February. Very nice performance for the year. Look at that, 1 year low point. We are now selling these for 6 million ISK, losing a third of the price. Warhead flare catalyst, also clear downtrend here in March, going back down to 5 million ISK. What is this one doing? Down as well, not super noticeable because of this massive spike, but pretty obvious. So it does seem to be a trend. So let's take a look at the medium ones. Stuff like the Gila, I think, can use these. So even, yeah, medium warhead rigger catalyst, look at that, went for 1.8 million and is now selling for 1.2 million. A couple trying at 165, but look at that, 158 of them coming in. Quite a bit of crashing here as well. Fair catalysts, nice spike back down. And this, I think, also trading at the low end of the range as well. Anything else that I should... Oh yeah, of course, we get the... let's see, engineering rigs, right, for capacitor. I think those, to try and make your caps, ship cap stable, tend to be used quite often. Let's see if I can find... No, that's energy weapon rigs, engineering rigs. That's what I wanted. Large stuff like the... Where is it? Capacitor control circuit. Yeah, strong January, February, 8 million at the high end. Currently selling for 5 million, excluding almost half the price. Command processor, not that good in volumes, so can't really see that much of this one. Ancillary current router, is that one? Jesus. 25 million, currently trading for 16.5 million. Same thing, losing almost half its price, 50% downtrend. Massive volume here as well. Let's see, capacitor control, not here. So that's not across the board. Really massive volume. There has been quite a bit of extra dumping here. Let's take a quick look at the medium ones then. Capacitor control circuit, yeah, down quite substantially. It's not that bad in the mediums, of course, but that's a lower price. But the trend is pretty obvious. And yeah, up to you to decide, of course. Do you want to gamble on some of these 1 year low points for some rig purchases? I think it could make sense, especially in the large ones, if battleships come back, thanks to the frigate escape bay. A bit of a surprise to me. Perhaps next week we'll take a look at the salvage materials then and see if we can find an explanation for this, well, just a massive downturn in the rig market. For now, that's gonna be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Stay healthy, and as always, I'll see you next time.